test microphone. Everybody can hear me clearly?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
so I'm excited to start our second week. I have 3 of my beloved students with me here. So now I am in the class. So before we start, I just wanted to ask you guys, have you buy? give me. Okay, so we have 3 new Sundays here. 3, 4, 4, 4. One is with Sekar already. 4. So anyone buy new USB just for this class? Anyone? Anyone? No one. Okay, maybe only us.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
hopefully you got it because we are going to do some hands-on session with this. Okay, so I have to get some money from Sandis because they have good revenue because of my class. Okay, so before I started, I wanted to walk through with you what we are going to do today. So this session is called Computer Forensics Methodology Sessions. So we have 5 steps. Okay, actually I don't like teaching sitting. It's not my style, especially in undergraduate. I would have said it is haram to sit in the class because usually the students at the back they are just going to do yeah. That's why I rarely sit in the class, so the chair is just an accessory. But I will sit today, yeah, guys. Obviously, because my microphone is in here. Okay, so we have 5 methodological steps that we are going to do today and we are going to discuss by today. So first of all, I have identification. Second is collection. Fourth is analysis, and fifth would be the presentation. So we are going to do these 5 steps today. So let me start with number 1, which is what is identification. Now, before I wanted to talk about notes taking. Now, last week we discussed a little bit on the importance of identifications, and then when you as the investigator, you walk into the crime scene, you need to make notes. Now, notes taking is part of pre-recovery planning. So it is involve, recognize documents, collect, package, transport, and store. So first of all, some of the objects of the investigations nowadays, it is harder and harder to be recognized. That's why that when you walk into the crime scene, you need to perform a thorough documentation. You need to have a photographer with you or a videographer with you, and then you might want to draw by yourself. This is the locations of what and what. And then documents. Okay, questions that I often get is, when should we start documenting? You have to start documenting as soon as you arrived. So when you walk into the door, that's how you start documenting. So for example, the kind of documentation is that you found that the room, when you walk in, whether the door is locked or not, and then what do you see first, and then how many computers, and then the positions of the computers. Now before touch or move anything, you have to have somebody that are documenting. So if you don't have a photographer or a videographer with you, at least have an audio recorder. So you have to perform these documentations before you touch or move anything. Like for example, I have a charger in here. So before I touch this charger, I have to say that in the tables, in the corner, in the right corner, there is a charger. So I am taking the charger. It is a Lenovo with the series, la 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 la, and then it is located in here. And then I found a laptops, for example. This is the laptops of the said charger. And then when I found the laptops is already turned on, there are three applications running, the time and the clock show that it is 1828, and so on and so on. You have, if you found an electronic device and it is turned on and it has a clock or a time, you need to document that because you wanted to know whether you are working in the same time zone with the criminal or not. So maybe they are from overseas, maybe you are from in the same time zone, or for example that they plan the crime from some time ahead, and then the clock wasn't just stay the way it is. So for example, the computer has been used to plan some kind of attack. It was on 2022, and then this is the day when they are going to execute that, and then the time is not changed. So actually the time is very important. Later on there will be a tools that I wanted to go to you, and then one of the tools capability is actually to map the evidence timeline. Times is important. Okay, documents the condition of the electronic device. If it is on, do not switch it off. If it is off, do not switch it on. Oh, I found in the crime scene a new iPhone. Let's try this out. Okay, the camera is good. Okay, so if it is on, document all open windows. So for example, that you saw a computers that are turning on, and then you wanted to know what kind of applications was on. So what you can do is that you can motions, if you are using Windows, you can motions in your tray and then just quickly check what are the applications that are now running, because some of the computers they have an auto locked and auto encryption. If a computer have an auto encryption, you have to be careful because you do not want the encryptions to kicks in, because once the encryption is kicks in, you cannot, it's, well, you will find it hard for you to find an evidence, because now everything has been encrypted. So make notes is very important. We are human, we tend to forget, and last time I checked, human tends to die. So what are the odds that the head of the investigator was, I'm not praying, but they are on an accident, and then just about when the investigations kicks in, and then the crime, the criminal roaming free. So you have to document everything. So electronic evidence involved. So if you are investigating in the residence or in the private place, in the business, it is quite tricky because the server does involve in the businesses, so server cannot be shut down, so you have to do something on this. Not on the types of operating systems, the network connection, when you found it, does the network on or not. And then you might want to talk with the administrator, who was the administrator, who have access to the administrator, and can you gain an access for the purpose of the investigation itself. Right, so photos, your photos, make sure that when you photo, you do not photo it to zoom in or to zoom out. So you need to take a picture. No pictures is enough. Just take as much as you can, from different angle, for example. And then the evidence should show damage. If there are some damage, you have to note the location where it is found. So for example, that I am collecting a laptop from the third row in the laboratorium, for example. I am obtaining the laptop, it was thrown away in the corner. I am collecting a laptop from a trash bin. I am collecting a laptop that were hidden in some bags. You have to let the investigator to be able to understand the conditions of the crime scene. Again, as I said, you have to tell whether when you found the evidence it is on or off. Usually, if phones is involved, if the phones is on, you want to keep it on. So, for example, if the battery is, you can take a pictures when you found the battery is 17%, 80%, but you wanted to keep it on as long as you can, because normally works in different manufacturers, but normally when once a phone is turned off, the moment it is turning on, another layer of security might be there, so it will hinder you to do something. overall close-up positions of the photos of the ever connected device to the evidence. So here is the trick. Do not turn off an electronic device if you find it on in the crime scene, but you have to take it off the internet. So for example, if you found a cell phone, put it into the airplane mode and make sure it is not connecting to any Wi-Fi or any connection, because we are afraid that the criminals can remotely access that phone. But before you turn it off, before you put it in the airplane mode, make sure that you take note. For example, a phone has been found. It is currently connected to Sekar Wi-Fi, for example. Uh-huh. I know Sekar is connecting to this phone, so then I have to interrogate Sekar now. So, Sekar, where did you buy this Sandisk, for example? So, you have to take note first. So you take a picture where the first evidence is that how do you find the phone? Take a picture, have someone videograph you checking it. Take note where and how that the phones or laptops are connected to. Make sure that you have enough evidence and then take it off from the internet, because you do not want the bad guy to, to be able to remotely do something. For example, if dropping, sending, or deleting data, we did not know what they might be doing. Now, also happen if you found a smartwatch, because also it can be accessed from outside. So overall, close up picture, the position, the connected device to the evidence prior that you take it off the internet. Right? So step number one, potential evidence. So you have to recognize the types of digital evidence, and then items that might be look like not a digital evidence, but it is. Computers, tablets, phones, routers, smart embedded things such as smartwatch, smart fridge. Yes, you have to take the fridge. Alexa, smart TV. So this could be parts of your potential evidence. Take all the flash drives, hard drive, memory cards. If there are surveillance cameras, CCTV, and baby monitors. So this is the kind of evidence that we have to be worried, such as the a camouflage device, right? Is this a chapsticks or a lipsticks? No, it's a USB. Yeah, so and then beware of a small USB. So for example, that I have a SanDisk here and a Samsung and Kingston's, very small, 128 gigabytes. But this is a very small. It is easily can be dropped in the corner. You cannot see it. But if you lost this small USB, you lost 128 probably worth of evidence. And then beware of the devices that are being hidden, such as this mobile detective video camera. Is actually a USB that are being plugged somewhere in the corner, but it is actually a CCTV. So be careful of this. So when we talk about recognize digital evidence, means that also recognize a possible camouflage devices. And then also beware on the small PC. We have a PC as big as USB now. So I selected these illustrations that I have in here of two small PC here. It says in entire PC, guys, not a USB. It's the entire PC. So my illustrations in here is a woman's hand, yeah, woman's hand, guys. Woman's hand is so small, guys. Very small, guys, very small, very small. So it is smaller than a woman's hand. Can you imagine it? If I said that smaller than Devin hand is bigger than me. So it's smaller than a woman's hand. Right. So once you get an evidence, you have to mark the evidence properly. The forensics investigator, they have a label. It's a very, very strongly adhesive labels that cannot be removed easily. So usually when you stick it, it is hard for you to peel it. So it's a labels, a very strong adhesives that cannot be removed easily. Yeah. So we do not label it with a post-it. Post-it. So post-it is very easily to be removed. Store the evidence properly. If you are writing the labels by hands, you have to use a permanent marker. Have a logbook that will identify the evidence based on their characteristics. So in case the labels is removed, so you have a logbook. You do not say that one MacBook. No, you say that one MacBook Pro M1 with a service ID. La 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 la. So you have to identify it as clear as possible. So even people that are trying to modify the evidence, they will find it hard because the specifications. So for example, rather than says that found one gray laptop, so you have to say that found a laptops with specification, serial number, with the dent, with this, with that. So you have to give the characteristics. The information should be specific enough for recollection, means that you know that an investigator will not be investigating only one case. It must be maybe they have like a series of cases that they are handling, or an investigation that parallelly going on. So your informations on the evidence itself should allow an investigator to recollect, oh yeah, that laptop, oh yes, that mini PC. So for example, a hard disk with a serial ID with the characteristics such as a big one, a small one, the color, USB with 3 ports, 4 ports, the text, device module, serial number, the cable type, or if there is any seeable damage that you can check. Again, have the evidence photographed and have an eyewitness for all the collections actions. Okay, so yes, Amar.
Okay, sorry, ma'am. I want to
Sure.
ask about the how if we want to investigate some hard disk, but we not found the serial ID number, ma'am.
Usually the serial ID would be in the back part, the back of the USB, unless that it has been removed or the case has been changed. So if you do not have the serial ID, you can specified enough from the other characteristics such as the size only or the color only or the ports only or other informations that you might find it there.
Or ma'am, so is that mean the serial ID is not important, ma'am, or what?
If it is there, then you must write it down. But if the serial number is not shown, then also in the log you can mention the size, the ports, the text, and then the device model, and then you can say that serial number is not being found. So the missing serial number is actually one of the evidence by itself. So if someone is trying to hide their device serial number by removing the case and then recase it with something else, it is a characteristics by itself. So if you have the serial number, you can write it down. If the serial number is not exist, then you can uh, you can place other informations that are available. But because of course the investigation must keep on going, right? So we have to work what we have in our hand. All right, thank you. Okay, so now we move on to the second type. Second, not second type, second step, I mean. Okay, so step one, identifications, we've done that. Now we wanted to do collection. Okay, collection. What do you have to collect? You have to collect relevant informations. They may exist in the surrounding places. And then the possible hints, such as the information in the desk, keyboard, anything posted in the desk, and removable media. So, for example, if you collect a laptops in the table, and then in the table it is present a locker, you might wanted to check the locker. What are the odds that the laptops is password protected and the password is in the locker? And then if you are working with a computer, people are hiding things at the back of their keyboard. So check it. Check the informations on the desk. Check the informations on the keyboard. Check anything that are posted in the desk or any removable media. I think we have watched enough um you know this Mission Impossible James Bond movie. So like for example, there is a laptop password protected. There is like a statue of Medusa, and then there was like, oh, the password is Medusa. It's like, and then they found like a salamander. It's like, oh, the password must be salamander or something. But it in the movie it looked like a joke, but it is actually mimicking something, like 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 when you like something a lot, it is imprinted in your brain. So maybe the password or something that are meaningful to them would be you can find it. Like just tell me how many of you is putting your pets as your password, or a father and a mother, their password must be their child date of birth. So get the information, like for example, there is a calendar and it's marked the birthday of someone. So if it is important enough for them to highlight it, so I believe that it must be something. Right, so I have Azam raising hands. Is it a real questions or yes? Okay. Yeah. I cannot hear you clearly. Azam. Okay. Right. Um. Okay. So I will wait for Azam to change device and come back with us. Right. So during collections, computer need to be secured, and then the consideration is again, if it is turn off, do not turn it on. You wanted to remove the hard disk and perform a hard disk imaging. What is this hard disk imaging? Stay tuned. You are doing imaging soon using the FTK. FTK. So if the computer is turned on, do not turn it off. So if the computer is turned on, do not turn it off. What you have to do is you have to acquire a volatile data and do live imaging. What is a volatile data? Jeng jeng jeng. What is a volatile data? Yes, Fajri.
Yeah, sorry, ma'am. I want to ask about the do not turn in out on off thing.
Yeah.
What if the device is almost run out of battery? Should we do anything to keep it turn or just let it turn off?
Yes. If it is a
I
PC,
mean,
if it is a PC, not a laptop, yeah, or a tab or a phone. If it is a PC, you have to turn it off, right? Because you have to bring the PC to your lab. Now the thing is, when it is still on, then it is better for you to document the information, like in here.
oh,
After
specific goal is to
after evidence is being identified, you wanted to keep information, you wanted to acquire information as soon as possible. So if the computer is turned on, this is my example before, look for the bottom tray. This bottom tray in the Windows will show to you the applications that currently running. So at least get a chance to get this information because you wanted to know what kind of application that is currently running. So maybe the attacker left something in here which is can be useful for us in our investigations later. So you might wanted to make a live image. What is live image? Again, doing imaging. Stay tuned. We are doing that soon. So we do not wanted to turn off the device, and then if it is meant that you are going to kick on some encryptions, because many of the encryptions such as VeraCrypt, Xcrypt, Cleopatra, SecureDoc, and any encryptions that you can rename, they are starting when the computer are restarting. So you might wanted to know and be worried about this.
Okay, so the key is yeah, we want to take the information. If it's already collected, then
Yes.
yeah, it's good. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So if the computer is on, ask the investigator or argue that if it is on, you might wanted to pull the plug. So the computer is on. You wanted to pull the plug so that it is powered off, but it is powered off abruptly. Because when a computer are turning off properly, they will turn off your computer properly, guys. It will just, do you wanted to save? No, no, no. Yes. Do you wanted to save? No, 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 no. And then every application is closes. So you are actually erasing the evidence. But if you pull the plug immediately, the forensics investigator argue that you actually freezing the current state. Whatever that are opened, for example, imagine uh, Microsoft Word closed abruptly. When it is open, it will say, would you like to save the previous one? Or like some recovery mode and so on. So this is what we call by freezing the current state. Now, the negative effects is that you lost the information on the RAM. Some file might be corrupted. And again, when you turn it on, some cryptography tools might kick in. So is the notes from us, the forensic investigator. You need to know the what kind of case you are working with. Are you working with a high criminal profile? Is it just an internal problem? Like for example, kind of internal problem is that somebody are stealing data and sold to the competitor, so they are actually that cannot do many programming things, so you just need to know what they are doing. And then criminals might wish investigator to perform some task, like for example, they hope that we are doing something, and then while we are doing that, it is actually triggering like a software bomb that could trigger auto wipe. Like for example, if I do something and then the criminals hoping that I am doing that, and then they will trigger a software that can actually deleted everything. So depends on the severity of the case and level of competency of the suspect, the investigator might want to pull the plug. So don't do anything, no live imaging whatsoever, just pull the plug. This is if you do if you are doing with a high profile criminal case. I think I saw something. I feel like a streamer now. What PC? What if the PC have some password protections? Uh, you have to work. Okay, never ever 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 Rehan, work with the real PC where you are investigating. Never, ever, ever. So what you have to do is that you wanted to make an exact copy of the PC. So you wanted to copy the entire PC in the forensics laboratory, of course, so that you have the duplicate of that PC. Exactly the same to the dots. And then that's how you do your brute force attack, your guessing limit, and whatnot. So never, ever, 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 ever work in the in the computer that you're investigating. What if there is an oops moment? Oops, I forget I deleted this. Oops, I want to investigate, but I open Netflix. So never. Yeah, so whatever password guessing and all, we have all those software that we can use, brute force and so on. I learned it the hard way. Well, that's why Ariantika. So we have the threshold in here. If you um if you turn it off like normally, so you are closing many applications that you might wanted to find it later. So that's why that you might wanted to do something. So that this is actually still the debate actually. So some would say that, well, preserve it when it is still on, like like a simple alt tab actually could help. And then also you might wanted to quickly check your the memory, in the task manager, click on my memory. So a simple picture, so say for example, just click on the memory quickly, take a picture and then shut down, would also helps. Because I was asking to the floor just now, do you guys know what is volatile memory? What is a volatile memory? A volatile memory is, yes. Yes, a volatile memory is an information that are in the RAM. And your RAM will be gone when you restarted it. The only information that will stay with you is the information in the hard disk, whereby your information in the RAM will be gone. This is my scriptsy, a study of, hang on, a study of volatility forensics on hidden file. I finished this scriptsy on 2012. It got published in 2013. And then at that time, there are not many research on the volatility forensic. So you know that your RAM will be gone the moment you restarted. Your RAM is actually um, what speeds off the instructions in your computer, right? You cannot save in the RAM, you save in the hard disk. So now the size of the hard disk is increasing from 4 gigabytes to 18 to 16 to 32 now. So imagine if we have a small applications but powerful, and then it can run in the RAM. So after you run the RAM, you run the applications and it's gone. No trace of evidence. So that's why that you wanted to check on the volatile data. Okay, for every step during collections and acquisitions, details, the documents, well, we are now going to use applications A. Why I'm using applications A? Because it can help us to do what, and then why you do it. Okay, please don't say that I wanted to use this application because my gut feeling say so. Right? So what you do and why you do it, tell us. Photographs and video recording should include the computer screen for live and hardware component from multiple angles. Details the finding, such as if you found a book, like for example, that you wanted to know why a company A have a malware. The malware resides on a certain computer. The result of the malware is a data leak. You found it in somebody's computer, and then you check in the drawer or nearby, there is an information malware 101. So you know that he's using that book. So what, or for example, some prints out or collectible magazines. Why I type books in here twice, I do not know. So maybe another books. So details the tools that are used for making this forensic image copy. I mentioned some in the slide number 1. You can check back. And then you also wanted to check the originals hash. What is hash? Let me tell you what is hash. Hash is actually a signature. So you wanted to compare the signature of the file, of the original file, and copy file. Now we move on to the next phase, which is preserved. Now, you have to understand that again depends on the severity of the case. You might be handling an investigations more than 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. So you have to preserve it for 10 years to come. Some investigations would go on to 15 years. So, yes, that's how long it takes for some. So, how do you preserve something for 15 years? That means that you have to collect it and place it very securely. Documentation is very important. That's why that you wanted to have a videograph. So when a new investigators are being called in, they can watch, oh, this is how it's looked like at that time and so on. So on-site investigator should ensure the preservation, make sure that the evidence is saved on scene, from the scene in transit and to the lab. Now, I would say that this is very, very important. Chain of custody. What is a chain of custody? So if, for example, I have an investigator, my on-site investigator, the first person that walk into the door, for example, is Devin. Devin bring a videographer, Dava, for example. So Dava should document everything, take a picture or taking a video, while Devin are handling the evidence. So Devin has to say, I found a USB SanDisk Cruiser blades with a typical ID, blah and blah and blah. And then you have to tell that the investigator should bring a labels and also a bag for the evidence. So you have to open the bags, the evidence bag, place the evidence, and then close it again and label it. And that evidence, since Devin is the one who retrieved it, Devin could not put the evidence anywhere else except in Devin's own body. So you need to bring an evidence bag where everything that you collect will go to your evidence bag. This bag must be with you all the time. What if you are going to the bathroom? You have two ways if you wanted to go to the bathroom. First of all, bring it with you. Secondly, have a handwritten notes to give it to somebody else. Sign it. That is what we call by chain of custody. It is already in your custody the moment you hold it, investigator. The moment you hold it, it is in your custody. You cannot leave it. If, for example, that you cannot go to the forensic lab to store it in the evidence locker, take it with you, sleep with it. But of course, that when you sleep, you don't know what's going on, right? Right. So, take it with you, label it, seal it, put it in the evidence bag. It stays with you all the time. So you cannot roaming around the area and then you leave it for 5 minutes. No, cannot, never, ever. Yeah, haram. Again. So chain of custody means that you need to have that evidence with you and it must be with you all the time. And then the evidence should be secure against electromagnetic or mechanical damage. So make sure that, because you know that high electromagnetic and high magnet could erase our data. Our data is stored in one and zeros, right? And then it is written using an electromagnetic. So if you have a strong magnet, you can erase your data by zipping it, flooring it. So I have a hard disk here, and then I have a strong magnet. So if I put it very closely, it will erase the data. It will be all be zeroed, like an eraser. So 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 you have to put it in a strong what is it, case. So electronic handled using static free evidence gloves and seal. You know, sometimes a static could ignite fires too, so careful with that. So understands the capacity to read, write, executes, and write protections when you work with original evidence to prevent changes. I have Azam back with us, I think. Azam.
Yes, ma'am, Tifa, you can hear me very clearly now. Yeah,
Uh, it is better.
yeah, okay, ma'am. Thank you very much for the time. So, I am about going to the more practical that I am currently facing, ma'am, because in my job, my place where I'm working right now, related to the evidence or data or reference that we are about to collect on some cases. The thing is, ma'am, how do we know if the reference of data or reference of evidence is what we are what we are seeking is original, ma'am? Because there are a case in my scanner of job. I am about to recognize whether the transaction is original or not. To recognize it, so we have to speak about the evidence in terms of the photos of the transfer evidence or transfer payment transfer that we are receiving. But in some case, we also receive that kind of evidence in a different time.
May I
The
know
same
what kind of evidence are we talking in here? Is it a document? Is it a file?
photo, man,
Need
photo,
photo.
photo, the same file, but different time where when it takes when it took. So
Okay.
how do we know which one of reference that is original?
I see. Okay. I will hold your question for a moment. I think I can show you some of the tools later on for you to check if
Okay,
it's
man.
okay. Yes, because actually to answer your questions quickly, how do you know about a picture or a document for that matter? The first step that I would do is to inspect the metadata actually to know whether an image is original or not. You could do a bit checking actually, bit by bit checking. That is one way to do it. A second way to do it is to check the metadata actually. I think we can talk about this more in the hands-on session so that I can show to you some ways for you to check the image itself.
Okay, man. Okay,
But
okay,
thank
sure.
you for bringing it. I think I can come up with a case study for this.
Okay, man. Thank
Yeah,
you.
image forensics. All right, thank you. Ammar, is it?
Azam.
Azam. Okay. Well, Ammar have left for his meeting. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Nah, this is the one that I talked before. So this is what we call by a ziplock. Not the ziplock to store your fruits. This is a zip to we call this an anti-static bag or a Faraday case. You can use a tape uh, in the opening ports. So, for example, I have a phone. I have an opening port in here, right? You have to tape it. So just to make sure that you know that nobody is plugging in without you knowing. And then use an anti-static bag. We call this Faraday case. And then have labels. And then control the evidence that are in transit. Look after the evidence at all time to ensure that there are no tampering while also in transit. So this Faraday case bag is actually now can be used for an entire room. So Faraday case is a case where when the evidence was inside this box, it will block all signals. So we wanted to make sure that it stays as it is. Now after that, after you carry your evidence, so you carry your evidence all the way um, from the crime scenes all the way to the forensics lab. So this is a typical forensics lab laboratory layout. Here I have an arrow to show to you. So this is we call this we call this forensic workstation. So I have one, two, three, four forensic workstation. So what is a forensic workstation? Forensic workstations will use a computer that are clean. Means that you cannot investigate two cases in the same workstation. Oh, I found an evidence of an attempted murder. Oh, I found an evidence of human trafficking. Maybe this case is correlated. No, it's two different cases. So in also forensic workstation, not only that they are clean means that you can only use one station to work with one case. Forensic workstations is also said a clean workstation because these workstations never, ever, ever touches the internet. So the moment that it was, original from the manufacturer with the specifications that are needed by the investigator, for example, 128 RAM, for example, or whatever supercomputer that they are doing for these workstations, not for gaming. So they never touches the internet. Do you know the 5 layers of the TCP IP? First, we have applications layer, we have the TCP layer, we have the IP layer, we have the MAC layer, and the physical layer. Now, this MAC layer is a physical layer connecting to the physical layer. I mean, it's in the link layer. Now, can you change your IP address? Actually, you can. That's why we have VPN.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. You can change your IP address, but you can never change your MAC address. Actually, you can change your MAC address. Buy a new device. so 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 when I buy these laptops and my devices, the moment it is touches the internet, now the internet know my MAC address.
The first trying to connect.
Now that's why that if you buy illegal phone, the moment it is connected to the internet, the email will be rejected. Your phone will not be able to be used. So actually, when we have the application like lost mode whatever, it is actually control your MAC. So when your MAC address is sniffed on the internet, we register that device is stolen device. How do you know that device is stolen device? The MAC address. Because you cannot, we don't have antenna, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order for us to connect to the internet, we need a media. One MAC address for one device. MAC address is like your car engine number. How to change your car engine number? My new car. So that's why that this forensic workstation is a clean computer because it never touches the internet. That's why in here is the internet connected workstation. But we do need to use an internet, right? So we have one special workstation, internet connected workstation. What about this? Cannot connected to anything. It's a specialized isolated computer. Once it is connected to the internet, we call it already dirty.
Oh.
So you wanted to work with a clean computer, right? That's why that some forensic workstations they have a different workstation. They call it clean, and then never use internet and so on. And then in here we have the conference cable. If a table is they wanted to discuss. This is a workbench. So this workbench usually is being used when you wanted to fix, because you do not know when the attacker or the criminal is trying to destroy the evidence by trying to break it up. Like for example, throwing it with something, making it harder to be detected. So this workbench is where you wanted to fix that. And then you have a server with the lab officers. Now, what I wanted to calculate with you is that let's count. This is where you put your evidence in the cabinets, and then the cabinet is also locked. Now, when the forensics investigator work with the evidence, they have to be in the digital forensics lab. And there should be a door that have an access in here, preferably multiple authentication, such as using a PIN and a token. Okay, yes. So actually, for those of you that wasn't in security classes before, I wanted to tell you that in order for you to identify yourself, there are three ways to do it. First is you identify yourself by something that you remember, which is PIN usually. You have to remember your PIN. The PIN. Your cat birthday. So it is something that you remember. So when people are trying to torture you, it's because something that you know, right?
Right.
Right. And then second is by something that you have, such as a card. So when you wanted to access your money and your ATM, you are doing two authentication. You know your PIN, you don't have the card.
Yeah.
Oh, ma'am, now cardless, ma'am. You need the phone.
Yes. Yes.
Still, it is something that you have. And then in your phone, why your phone is more secure than your card? Because to access your phone, you also need to have something that to unlock it. So three ways. One is by something that you know, which is the PIN. Next is by something that you have, which is the card or a token or something else, something that you are, which is the biometric. Beep scan or something, face recognition and something else. So this is a door access to place to preserve your evidence. Okay, one layer of security, right? And then they have to walk. CCTV is in here. And then to go to the evidence room, you have another door access. Another door access, another door here. So it means that second authentications, right? Second security. So if the some way or another people are trying to harm your evidence by stealing it or doing something, so they have to go to this door, and then after that, if they successfully manipulate its way to this door, then they have to be able to manipulate this door again. Two doors already. And then the evidence are in the cabinet, and the cabinet is also locked. So you have to make it mission impossible, guys. So this is how we are still in the preserve, by the way, not in the mission impossible. So for example, if it is a small evidence, you might wanted to place it in the locker, small locker like this. Everything is locked. It is inside an evidence bag. It is inside an evidence bag and it is locked. Or you could put it in like this, or you could put in one specific block box. So one way or another, this is how you can preserve your evidence. Now, I wanted to continue and resume our discussions on a forensics workstation here, which is I said that you have to work your evidence with a clean laptops, right? So before you work, you have to make sure that the computers that you will do to perform the analysis is clean and ster- sterile. Yeah, so you need to sterilize your media. So sterilizing media means that you have to ensure that there is no pre-existing data in the target drive. Now, later in the demo, I keep on saying later. When is the demo? So I will show you that uh, 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 a mere deleting a file is actually not deleting a file. Yeah, so if you said that I cannot submit my assignment because it is deleted, nah. When you deleted your file, it's actually not deleted. Okay, don't do that to me. So I teach some students on how this work, and then they trick me back. I was like, really? All right. Yeah. Some students submit an assignment, and then they doesn't finish it, and then they said, "Ma'am, my data is corrupted because I teach them how to corrupt data." It's like, wow. I was like, as a computer student, a computer security lecturer, I'm kind of proud of you, but okay. So this is how your data works. Let me tell you. Okay, your data is always saved as a cluster. Each cluster contain 8 sector. Now, let me, okay, Prodi budget money. Okay, let's use this one. All right, so, okay. Let's work with this. Okay, so one data, a data, for example, in here I have a single cluster contain 8 sectors. So this is sector 1, and then I have sector 2, and then I have 8. 6, 7, 8. Whoops, I have way too many. Right, so I have we got to start with 0 actually. I have sector 0, and then I have sector 1, and let's drag this into sector 7. Right, so I have 8 sector in total. So for example, each sector in here, this is let me just give you an easy example, yeah. So just assume that each sector can contain only 10 bytes. Just assume. So I have 10 byte in here, and 10 byte in here, 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 10 byte in here. Okay, so how many bytes could this clusters contain? Sure.
No, 80.
80 correct. But in reality is 4096 ya guys. In reality. So I just wanted to let you know in reality it is 96 bytes. So if you divide this by 8, each actually 512 each, yeah. So this is 512, 512, 512. Okay. So this is just for the sake of example, I would just put it 10 so that it is easier for us to calculate. So now I will delete this and then I put it 80 instead. So I have 80 bytes. So if I have a data, it is angry now because I'm doing some calculations before. Yeah, so I have 80 bytes here. Now I wanted to save one data. So I have lalala.txt. So this is a notepad. And then the size of this notepad is a small, right? So this is contain 20 bytes only. So it will be stored in sector 1 and sector 2. But since once you occupy a data, you have to occupy a single cluster. So although this cluster is not being used, it is cannot be occupied by some other data. So this is a waste now. Now this is why we have this defragment. Have you ever performed that? This defragmentation. So if you watch some YouTube video and all, they said that the defragment is actually a way for you to free this unused sector. Now I have another story. I deleted this file. So this file is now deleted. So after some time, lala.txt is no longer being used. Tada, gone. So these data, which is I highlighted with yellow, it is still there. The data is still there. So these 10 bytes of data, it is actually still there. It's just that now this sector is marked available to be used. These sector that are previously contained lalala.txt, it is the lalala.txt is still there. But it is like assume that you are occupying some room, but you cannot pay it anymore, but you are still in the room, but people will already sell that room. So you are still a resident there. So because you are deleted, but you are there, but you are still there. Now let me have another story. Now lalala is gone. Now I have nanana.txt. Nanana.txt is 80 bytes. So I would have occupied the entire thing, right? Now where is lalala? Lalala is now replaced because you have used the entire byte. Now let me give you another story. Now Nanana is deleted. Let me just put red in here so that we have our history, okay? So I have 20 bytes previously here, right? Okay, so now Lalala is gone. Now Nanana is gone. Now, this is now free space now. The file is still there. The file is still there, but it is marked that since it is been highlighted as deleted, you can use this space now. Now I make another file, favifu now .txt. So favifu is a trend given from Sir Andika. He always use that. Yeah. My friends, actually those that are online, I have a friend called Sir Andika. He always say favifu or yada yada. Yeah, he always says that. No, he's in Bali and we miss him. Okay, so I have, okay lah, let's like this fafafa. Okay, so fafafa.txt is only 30 bytes. Okay, now this is can be used, right? Yes, because Nanana is all deleted. Now 30 bytes, which sector would I use? 0, 1, 2, exactly. It's like this case in here in my PowerPoint. Okay, so now one sector 0, 1, 2 will be utilized by fafafa. Oops, wrong. Okay, so I will use it in green now. This is green. So it means that Nanana is still here. Because you only use partial information. So you can recover a deleted file as long as it is not been replaced by something else. Something else bigger. So that's why that if you are working on an investigation and then you deleted a previous file, previous investigation, and then you reuse that computer for another investigation, you will find something that was not belong to that investigation. Like for example, that there is a gun picture, which is the evidence, and then you replace it with something else. And then you found, oh, this gun is being used in this investigation as well. No, because you deleted that, and then now you recover it. So you cannot do that. Yes. So this is what we call by deleting a file does not remove the data. You just remove the link to access that data. So in here we call it, for example, in here you have a file A. You occupy sector 1 and sector 2 for file A. Now file A is now deleted. It is being replaced by file B, but file B wasn't as big as file A. So the information in the file A is there.
Full information or
This part only. This part only. Now for the demo tonight, I have a student from my previous batch. So again, the last batch that I teach for master study was 2021, I think. So at that time, she said that my students, Miss, I am using a computer that are very old. What would you suggest for your demo tonight? Because I was having a same demo. You buy a 2 gigabyte USB. So a 2 gigabyte USB brand new nowadays is a hard find. So she bought a pre-loved one, the one that already being used. So someone have a 2 gigabyte USB and then they sold it online. They just delete the file, and that USB is being bought to be used for a forensic class. Can you imagine the things that we found? It was very interesting. It was very interesting. I also have a student that was using their own USB, but a very old one. 2 gigabyte USB is not old. It's very hard to find nowadays. And I was like, Miss, thank you, Miss. I found my old picture with my wife when we were young. Okay, good for you, Pa. I'm happy too. Right. So who knows that computer forensics class could bring you to places. Now, how would you sterilize the media? It's like you don't have to buy new computers every time. So I have an examples of the software that you can use in here. It's called a wipe kill disk. So a kill disk, actually, what they do is, because we have this information, right, the clusters information. So as you know, our computer speaks with binary, which is 0 and 1. So what you do is just you simply put everything all zeros. So a kill this or a sterilizing media, the essence is that you just wanted to make sure that everything's in your computer was already zeroed. So what makes a data is actually the combination of those 0 and 1. So you wanted to make it in full zero, right? So this is what I wanted to highlight before we go on. So imaging is not copying. So doing a live imaging, again, it is not a copy. So if for example I have 8 gigabytes of SanDisk here, if I put a copy, if I place an image of something, for example, I take a past photo and then I put it here. Maybe a photo, the biggest photo maybe only 10 megabytes or 15 megabytes, one picture. So if you copy the content of this SanDisk, inside this SanDisk I only have a picture of 10 megabytes, and then I copy the content, the result of the copy is only 10 megabytes, because you only copy the data that are contained inside this SanDisk. But if you are doing imaging, you are copying every bit in here. So what is the result of doing imaging of 8 gigabyte SanDisk? An 8 gigabyte file. Imaging means that you are doing an exact copy. You don't care what's the content. If it is 8 gigabytes, the result of the imaging would be 8 gigabytes. If you are doing an imaging of 4 gigabytes SanDisk, then the result will be 4 gigabytes. Even if in here there are nothing, if you are doing imaging, you will get an exact replica, duplicate, exact replica. Since you are doing an exact replica, it means that you are able to retrieve also the stacked and deleted copy. So after successful imaging, the drives will be analyzed and calculated and store the message digest before the investigator between the analysis. So then you do the analysis, you perform the analysis using the forensic copy. This should be done in the controlled environment, such as in the lab. You need to confirm the tools and notify your supervisors when you have something that you can uncover. And then lastly, you have to present this. So you need to have a CD, a detailed report or something, and then have an introduction summary of the finding. What have you found? List the evidence. Let them know what are the tools for the examination and the conclusion. Right. So lastly, you have to prepare the information such as the findings. When you present the result of your findings, you might need an expert witness. What is an expert witness? It is, as the name suggests, it is an expert that have an information, special skills, and ability. So store your information, work even after the investigation is done. Legal cases and legal examinations might be called to uncover some information. Okay, thank you very much. Now let's do our hands-on session. Any questions from the floor? Are you ready? Yes, Fajri.
I have a question about the memory. If you don't mind, can you show the previous
Slides?
slides? Yes.
Sure. On the deleted file?
Yeah, on the deleted file.
This one?
Oh yeah, that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to ask about your file B.
Okay.
Yeah. is sector select, right? So
Yeah.
when we add new file, will file A replace or it will start from the sector 3, for example?
When you have a new file, it won't start here. It won't start here. It will start with in the new sector.
Okay.
So file A will be there.
Okay.
And yeah, until the size of file B increases.
Okay. Will be
Otherwise,
there, but not for file.
yes,
Portion. Okay.
yes. So thank you for your question. You are very thorough. So correct yeah. When you start a new file, it won't start in the middle here. It will start in the beginning of the new sector. Thank you for the questions. Ma'am, can you retrieve data from VRAM or it is a a a a completely different thing because it is lagging. uh you it is hard to retrieve a data from the RAM, especially if it is has been taken some time, because as you know that RAM is very dynamic. So for example, if for example you work on a file and then you work on B file, so it might be there in your RAM, but after 1 or 2 hours after the computers are turned on, something else might already kick in. So it is actually taking a special activity to do a volatile RAM forensics. That's why that we have a new special um, ways to conduct that. And actually, a part of our activity tonight is actually how to check how you are able to retrieve things from your RAM. So it is a different procedure, but I don't say that it is impossible. It's just you have a time is an of essence in here. So you cannot retrieve the information from RAM every time. It's just that one time thing. Because as you know, after you restart your computer, it will be gone, right? Okay, so here is the thing, guys. I install the FTK that are a little bit different in this computer actually. Why is that the FTK that I show to you, that I asked you to download, last week I download it in my computer, but I am doing demo in my laptop here. So my FTK software might be a little bit different than you, but the functionality is still the same. Okay, so what I do is that I just plugged in my USB drive, the new one, it is brand new here. And then what I am going to do is that I am going to open my FTK, forensics toolkit imager, and I'm going to click OK. Yes, in here. So yours might be newer, maybe version. Which version is your FTK, guys? Version 6?
0.7,
I have the
Uh,
same.
I have some
4.7.
Should the same as yours, ma'am.
4.7?
4.712. Yes.
17.1.2.
Oh, okay. Then the one that I install in my computer is the one that is wrong then. The FTK that I installed was in my computer. I install FTK 8.1. Oh, okay. So you guys is downloading 4.7? Yeah, everyone? Yeah, thank
Yes, ma'am.
God. Otherwise, I would have been using 8.1. Okay, now, I have in here what file. Okay, file. You sure you download 4.7? Anyone download 8.1? This is what I download, you know.
4.7.1.2.
Oh yeah, 4.7. Yes. Okay, same. All right, thank God. Okay, now let's click on file in here. Okay, so now what we wanted to do is that we wanted to capture your RAM. This is the first thing that we wanted to do. And then secondly is that we wanted to capture the information in your USB drive. Okay, now let me know if somebody in here have 16 gigabytes RAM. 16. 32, anyone? 16, okay. Now, if you wanted to get an information on your RAM, what we are going to do is file and then capture memory. Okay. Now, this is what we are going to do. We call it memory dump. Yes, memory dump. Now, do not do memory dump yet. Okay, so after you perform this memory dump, because you are doing memory capture, you don't have to do memory dump right now because you are in your own computer, right? I will tell you what will be inside your memory dump. What will be inside your memory dump is, let's go to your task manager. Task manager. In your task manager, you have performance, right? Task manager performance. And then you can go to memory. You have CPU, you have memory. Okay, so inside this memory is actually things that currently running in your computer. Now, if you could click in here and click on resource monitor, please. Resource monitor. Go to your memory. Now, if you do your memory dump, you will get this information. Chrome running, Task Manager running, STK running. So whatever it is that your computers are running, it would be stored in your memory dump. Now in here, you receive an information that you might doesn't know, right? What is this cncmd.exe? Me neither. And then I also have SVC host. So what is this SVC host? So this is actually service host. That one I know, right? So, okay, guys, what is this? WhatsApp.exe. It is in my memo. Do you see me opening WhatsApp? No. Also, by the way, this laptop that I use tonight. It's a faculty laptop. See, no one's going to be there opening their WhatsApp in the computer that are open in public, right? So why WhatsApp is running? This is memory. Memory is a live information. This is a live information of your computer. Now we know that WhatsApp is doing something in the background. Do you see me opening WhatsApp? No. Who dare use WhatsApp in the public laptop? So when I open, I know you buy online shop, yeah. Right, so we are not going to do that. So now, if you see here, this is my service host, by the way. So service host performs so many things. Service host app model. So I sort this based on the name, yeah. Service host for clipboard. Service host for local service. Service host for this. Service host for that. Now, since we know that service host is doing so many things are done by service host. Now, the bad people, the criminal and the attacker, they might wanted to do what we call by hiding the tree in the forest. How do you hide a tree in the forest? easy. You just can put anything there. Any tree would do. You can hide it in the forest. Now, servicehouse.exe, for those that knows how to make an application, you can rename your application, right? So you can just rename your application from virus.exe, which would have been easy to be detected. Name your virus service host. So when we check your memory and we found a list of an activity called service host, it's just a Windows task, but it is actually not. So I have runtime broker here and so on. So this is how they try to see here Chrome 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, la 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 la. But I only open one tab. Chrome, come on. So many applications. Chrome, right, and so on. So if you perform a memory dump, that would be the information that you get, which is a live information on your computer. So we can do this actually. Let me open up some other discussion for us to check on your memory dump. Again, the information of your memory dump is your live RAM. That's why when I said that if you found a computer that you wanted to investigate on, do not turn it off because you want to have the RAM information. So you wanted to know what is going on, what are the applications that is currently running. Because maybe the malware is there, as in the name of the app. At least we can capture the name of the applications. Worst come to worst, we found a service host that was not a service host. So that is what we wanted to do. So let's close this. So we are not going to do memory dump tonight. So what we are going to do tonight is utilizing your USB that you have bought. Thank you so much. Now, I wanted to actually, what I want you to do is put something on your USB, anything. So uh, I just wanted to put some slides, actually my class slides. Any documents would do. So my plan is to put on a document in here. So I'm just gonna click copy and then put it in my USB. But I wanted to do something a little bit interesting because of my discussions with Azam, isn't it? Just now? Right. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So actually, this is a quick trick on performing an image forensics. We have a discussions on that. We call this steganography actually. But let me just demo this quickly to you for tonight. So um, I have a trial class before, so I did not prepare this demo for this class actually. But we can do it. Why not? Okay. So I have a picture in here of my office. Now, for those of you that has been to PU, they know where is it. This is in PU. Yes, my room is a mess. So, you see here, student submitting assignment. Here, ma'am, I'm sorry, late assignment. Ma'am, late assignment. I have my schedule here. I have the certifications, me and my best friend, but I'm sorry, best friend, your face is cut off. Bills I have to pay and so on. So, if you have this image and then you wanted to determine the information in this image, I can suggest one tools that you can use that are called EXIF tool. EXIF tool. So these applications you can download it for free in the internet. The name is EXIF tool. If you have a pictures, then you can just drag and drop it in the EXIF tool, and you will get the metadata of that image. So I hope that it can help you to determine whether the image was original or not. So in here I have the information of the directory. which is, it is in my desktop trial folder, right? And then in here, I have an information of file modifications date and time. So this is 2024, 5th of, oh sorry, 31st of May, 12:39. This is the time when these pictures are taken. Can I zoom in here? All right. So this is the time where the file is the image is being taken. So I took this image on 31st of May around lunchtime, and then I access this. When do I access this image? Today.
Yeah.
Actually 2 minutes ago. And then this is the file creation. What is a file creation? A file creation is not file modification time. A file creation is when the file arrived in this laptop. So it's called creation. So if I upload these pictures in the Google Drive and I download it, then I would have other creation time. Now I have file permissions, and then in here I have file types, and then this is taken by an iPhone. Okay, orientation is horizontal. This is the modified dates, which is the same with these dates actually. And then I have the offset time, la 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 time, and then this is the information of the lens and la 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 la. Not interested, but this is what I interested in usually. And you as an investigator, you will be interested in the GPS position. For example, I have a picture me and Dava having lunch. Now I wanted to know what had happened, where this lunch taken place. So let's check the GPS location. Yes. So when you investigate and then you get the time information, what do you actually obtain? You obtain an alibi. You have an alibi. So at this date, I have a picture, me and Dava doing consultation in canteen at this time. And then you found that, oh, Dava is suggested to be doing la 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 thing, for example. And Dava said, I have an information here. At this time, when the crime is in place, I was doing consultation. I have an alibi. This is the date and time. This is the GPS. I was here. Check the CCTV. So now a picture can help. Now the question is whether this picture is original or not. Now we could use these tools actually with we wanted to check the bit by bit information of this image. So I have a HXD in here. This is actually a binary effect of the picture. So remember the kill this where you can zero everything. This is the file metadata. So this is the information. Apple iPhone 11 Pro, which is the phones that are being used to take a pictures of this. This is the phone made. This is all the metadata. It just been presented nicely in the exist before. If this image has been edited, you can have an information because once an image is being edited, the software stamps will be there. Somewhere in here you will see Adobe Photoshop's opened. So like for example, let me copy this image, right? So I have a copy of this image. Now I will do something to this image. I will edit. Right, let's edit this image. I make some rotations for example. Let's add some brightness. All right, something. Okay, done. Save. Now, if you run this image again with the tools, now you will see some information. Right, so, okay. Now, when this image is being created, yeah, just now. When is this image is being modified? Just now. When it is being opened? Just now. So now you know that this image is as if that it is being taken just now. Now I have the information in here, the date, time, original. It's not changed. This is the created date. This is the date when the picture is really being taken, and this is the date when it is being modified and accessed and created. And then I have the GPS information still persists, and then we could use that HXD again, and then we could drag and drop this image, and then if you search patiently, you will have an information that some modification is being done. I'm not sure if we are using a normal photo editing, right? But the information in here it shows it is an Adobe. Here, this is you can make a comparison with the original. So arguably this editing image processing was done. Are you familiar with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case?
Oh yeah.
Actually, it allegedly a photo editing has been used to the Amber Heard pictures, which is an aiding saturation. You can check that. So now I hope that is answering something for the questions on checking or not. At least there are two tools that you can try. Now I wanted to go back to our FTK imager, right? So I have a picture. Sorry, I have a slides in here. So this is a USB drive. So you guys, what you can do is just please plug in your USB drive, please, and then put some information here. So I put the slides. Now what I will do is that I will access the slides. Okay. If you have a picture or a document or anything, please try to access it so that there is access time. So I have tried to open one by one. Once again, that I done this using a file that are inside my USB. So I accessed 3 files and the rest I did not access, and then I would delete them. So now my USB still empty. So copy something, try to access it, and then delete it, right? And then go back to your SDK. Go back to your SDK, and then let's click File, and then assuming that this USB is your evidence, yeah. This is your evidence, yeah. So let's click on Add Evidence Item. If I'm going too fast, let me know. We have to do this step by step. No, if it is not because of you three, I would not dare to be in this lab at 8 p.m., guys.
Yeah, also man.
Okay, please select the source evidence type. So we have physical drive because you have a real USB, right? Okay, let's go next. And then in here it is asking, where do you want to perform an imaging of the evidence? So what is the evidence? So my evidence is a USB, SanDisk Cruiser, blah, blah, blah. So this is my evidence. So imagine that you are an investigator, you found a camouflage device or you found a USB from the crime scene and then you wanted to perform an investigation. But again, we cannot perform an investigation from the real device, so you have to make an imaging. Right? Okay. Let me know if I'm going too fast.
What's the other one?
The other one in here?
There's a drop down. There's a...
Two?
Yeah.
This is this hard disk.
Oh.
This hard disk. This hard disk is 256 giga. If I'm doing imaging, I will just leave you in this lab. I will go home. Okay, 8 gigabyte USB. So, and then I will click finish. Right. So this is the information uh, that are located actually in the USB drive that we seen just now. So I have a physical drive one. Okay, and then in here I have no name. And in here I have root. Okay, guys. Okay, guys. Are you with me? Yeah. Yes. Are you with me, the one in online?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So just we are clear, yeah. In here, in my USB drive, yeah. Where is the slides? I have deleted it, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But it is shown in here. So you could get these slides back actually. Because again, once you deleted something, it is still there. So the slide is actually still there. Okay, so this is my slide, yeah. The one that I copy and I deleted, right? Remember how many slides I opened? I open
5.
3. I have 5 slides. I open. Someone in online also wrong. Okay, I have 5 slides. I open 3. So I have a file. I have some files like in here of the 3 slides that I opened. And then in the slides there are a word computing. This computing is actually the name of the author of the slides. Now I have slide 1 in here. Okay, and then I will right click, then I would say export files. Okay, and then I would go to desktop because where else you save file, right? Okay, so click OK. One file exported successfully. I would click all right. Let's go to the desktop. The file name is slide ppt. Okay, so let's click on date modified. This is the information, right? The slides, and then this is the slide that I just deleted. So that's why. Oh, you have deleted your slide. If a computing student said that, ma'am, I cannot submit my assignment because my file got deleted. Come here. Show me your slide. Okay, guys. I just want you to try this out. Put a file in your USB. Those that are using old USB, you might find your, I don't know, old scenes. That's why I don't want to do this in your hard disk, yeah, guys, because it's a lot. It might take time. It's okay, you can do it. Okay, let me close the class and you do it. Okay. Anyone have a different result? Yes, Michael.
Oh, I would like to ask a question, Miss.
Oh,
Actually, it is about the USB because we are playing around the USB and hex editor. So I was remembering that we are creating a research paper using a network forensics also, and on those paper, on that paper, actually there's a combination between hex editor, Wireshark, and something else. And another class, I'm trying to partitioning my USB. Let's say it's 62 megabyte, oh sorry, gigabytes, and it can be partitioned and it becomes each of them becomes let's say 8 gigabytes and so on. So if we are partitioning our USB, it can be become another format of USB because several there are several types of USB, right? exFAT, NFTs, and others. But my question actually is uh, if with hex editor we can access low-level data on the drive or partitions, including the data that has been deleted but not yet overwritten, like just Miss Jutifa did with the Excel, la 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 na 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 and others. And a hex editors allow us to view the disk contents byte by byte, which actually useful for performing raw data recovery, right? But if we know the location or specific pattern of the lost data, we can retrieve the data actually. But my question is it possible if we retrieve the data that have been overwritten by another trace of data?
Cannot.
I know. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, because we can retrieve the data that has been deleted, right? But we can retrieve the data that has been overwritten? Actually, the question. Yeah.
So
And the locally.
essentially, if you have overwritten the data, the data isn't there. It is already overwritten. So what you can, when you recover that data from that place, what you get is the data that is currently residing there. Because we don't have a two layer way to save a data. So for example, that sector 0 until sector 80, for example, you have a big file, a game, maybe an application or an installation, and then because of the size of the files, it is actually taking many places. Like for example, if you install MATLAB, it will take 4 gigabytes only for the applications, not the data. And then the files that was previously there, it's already overwritten. So you cannot recover the data that has been overwritten unless it is just a partial remaining file. But you would have a tiny byte of information of the previously located file because um, uh, essentially we don't have 2 layers of data selection. We don't have a 2 layers of data selection. So the data is already, this is the data, and then you actually, when you say that a data is deleted, you have the access mark in here, right? The access mark
Yeah.
that you have in here. So
Yeah.
let me show you the difference actually, Michael, from of the data that are still there and the data that has been deleted. So we have a file type, and then like this is the real slides. Actually, this is the slides one that are still corrected. So if you notice that in here the header is docf11eo. So
Yeah.
this is the header of the file. This header of the file is denotes that this file is a PPT. Now, when you deleted this file in here, for example, that this is denoting the header, it shows that this file is a PPT. That's why that when I recover this, it is still recovered as a PPT. Now, if for example that you do not have the full information, y- uh, we gonna get what our friends have in here. Who said something there? You remove the image when you exported, the image cannot be opened. So I wanted to see how you do it actually. So it means that either when you copy the file, the image is too small, or that the way that you know that this is a new USB. So since this is a new USB, everything in this USB is all zeros actually. It's all zero. So it's like if you reuse a USB. So I wanted to know what had happened with the Denandi USB. I wanted to know more. So it's like you have a new drawing book, whereby everything is still empty. Now imagine,
canvas.
yeah, a canvas that are still empty. Now imagine that you wanted to draw something of a drawing book that already full. So what you have to do is that you have to delete some space so that you can draw it again. So the question is, once you draw something on that drawing book, you essentially has replaced the informations below. So that when you redraw it again, then it is already been replaced. So actually the short answer is, once it is has been overwritten, you cannot call it back.
Okay,
And
got it, Miss. And now the interesting questions actually, if we locally overwritten the data and we cannot retrieve it, how about the data that we upload on the cloud or the internet or intranet? Because what we have uploaded actually, and we delete, some says that we cannot delete the data that has been uploaded to internet, right? That's why actually Apple have issues when updating to the iOS specific version of iOS. Then they get the old data back to the phone, and it's the creepy news. But is it possible if we or I mean, it is the same locally with the cloud. Is it the same
character.
pattern, or yeah, or the local cannot be retrieved, but on the network, because there are so many space, there are also compressed data. Can we retrieve the I don't know, the permanently deleted data, but actually it's not permanently deleted. You know what I mean? Is it can be retrieved or no? I mean, is it same with local or is it different pattern
Oh,
if we upload to internet?
so thank you for your question. This is actually a very interesting discussion. So many of us is syncing our data to the drive, right? Like for example, you install your data and then you are trying to sync it to the net. I also did that. So I sync my data in the net, and then I just wanted to show you something on how bad is my sync habit. Okay, let me show to you. This is me sync my data to the internet. You see how many gigabytes I have? 778 gigabyte in the net. Oh, you cannot see it. Hang on. Here. So I asked you, what is my giga? How big can I store my data in your Google Drive? They said 5 tera. Okay then. So I upload most of my data here. So that's why I like Michael's discussion. So actually, because I did that very much. So yes, it is correct. When you upload your data in the cloud, your files is bound to be located in the server actually. And then server is not a client, and then a server will have their own different, I would say, rules and regulations. So how when I talk to you about the Slack and the file that are being located in the different Slack and space, this is our hard disk, and server have a different typical way to save the data. First of all, when you upload your data to the cloud or in the server, as you said, it is correct, they have a compression mechanism. So your metadata will change. So you upload the file in the cloud in the server, and then when you download it again, first of all, your a file metadata will be modified, And then secondly is that it might be compressed so you don't have the original information. But to answer your questions, actually, Michael, can we retrieve an information that has been deleted by the server? My answer would be it depends. It depends on the server regulation, and also it depends on the company regulations that actually working with that server. It would not be a surprise that a company or a server are having their own rules, having their own regulations, and they might purchase or created their own server with a different corporations. Like if you heard about the term big Indian, big Indians and the little Indians, it is actually the way that they store the documents. So again, it is hard when we talk about a server because they might have a different rules and regulations. That would be my short answer.
Got it, got it. Thank you, Miss. I couldn't be more agree with your answer, I think. Thank you so much, Miss.
Thank you. Okay, I have one last question. Do not throw away your USB drive. We are going to use it again next week. Okay, so this is just for a quick demo. I put PDF, remove them, cannot see the file in FTK Imager. Okay, so I have two different result in here with Denandi and Fajri. All right, it's okay. I will wanted to talk more about the deleted files. We are still in the analysis. Yeah, in fact, our entire forensic class is about analysis. Now, this is allow me to introduce a new tools that you have to download for next week. Right. So this is called Photorec by Recurva. Yeah. Okay, here. Photorec by Recurva. Okay, no, this is not the one that I want you to download. CG Security. Yeah. Okay, cgsecurity.org/Photorec. Let me copy this and then place it here. Okay, so Denandi and Fajri, we're gonna go through another way for you. Cannot be open, cannot be seen. That's why that we need to have a multiple tools so that we can work with several application. So please go to cgsecurity.org/wiki/Photorec, and then click download here. Download test this and Photorec. Don't click download in here ya. You will download weather forecast. Please. What you have to download is not the weather forecast. Yeah, so click download test this and Photorec in here. And then you will have test this 7.2 free download Windows. If you're not using Windows, I think they have others there. All right, so we are going to work with Photorec Recurva. This is very small. As I told you, there are 10 tools that I wanted to introduce to you. Actually, we are not done with FTK. So I have delivered the theory with you. I think we can do more hands-on next week. Our class would be on Wednesday. So yeah, I am changing the class with Sir Rusdianto. So before I let you go, allow me to take a screenshot of you. If you can turn on your camera, guys, please go ahead. I will not call you. I will not call you one by one. I will just take the attendance and then see your name there, and then I put like it's okay. Right. I think. Okay. Rian.